You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host Hunter here. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. Alright, so I have a new review for this new documentary film called Our Dad Danielle, which is written and directed by S.E. King, who you know from working on The Shrink, as well as Ex-Girlfriends back in 2012. They also wrote the Miami Bowl Project last year. Okay. This film in question is about this man who goes ahead and becomes a trans woman, comes out as trans at 57, and really about the fallout of all of that. And so, okay, let me just get the brass tacks here. We are, 5 days away from the election. I'll be real, y'all. I'm tired. I'm so tired. I believe Harris is going to win. I am terrified, though, that some of you might be shittier than even I think you are. So hopefully you prove me wrong in 5 days. But as someone who lived in Texas for about 9 years, lived in Austin, one thing that I even remember, and this would have been back in like 2010. I was living there, 2009, 2010. So when I was living there, there's very much this like intense loyalty to Texas. I've been here in Nevada for like a decade. I didn't even like it's still so weird to me that Nevada Day is a thing. You know what I mean? Like whenever it's like, oh yeah, where I was off for Nevada Day, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that stupid day you celebrate. But but in Texas, it's really similar. Where there's just such this loyalty of you know don't mess with Texas, that shit. And Texas is a really hard state to live in if you're a minority. Pretty much if you're not a straight cis white male, Texas is not an easy state. Women's rights are being rolled back. Minority rights are being rolled back. Oh my god, if you're gay or trans or oh my god, like you're really struggling. And what I appreciate about this documentary is that while it is 90% about Danielle and her journey to not find acceptance from the world necessarily, but really first and foremost to find acceptance within herself. The fact that it's mostly about her, it's 90% about her, and then there's a little sprinkling of political things due to the fact that she is trans, and that's something that she is gonna have to deal with. I appreciate the balance that S.E. King strikes, and I can only imagine, given the subject matter, how a lesser filmmaker would have maybe veered more into talking about politics. But I thought she struck an amazing balance, so props to her on that, just right out the gate. One thing I will definitely give the documentary a lot of credit for too is, and I can't really think, and I've watched a pretty good amount of LGBTQ content. I've never seen a warning for misgendering before. That was something that genuinely caught me off guard. I was like, huh, okay. Because look, I mean, I've talked about misgendering. There is a way to correct behavior and not be a dick about it. That's really my issue with it. But obviously you want to try to be as correct as you can. But when I think about it, I've definitely seen like people be misgendered, and it's really the only thing I can actually think of that's actually kind of talked about that on a pretty decent clip is the Babysitters Club. There's a whole subplot with one of the girls being a babysitter, and the kid they end up taking to the hospital is misgendered, and she flat out calls the doctors out on it. You don't see that really in 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 media. So I appreciate the warning and the fact that obviously there are some people who'd be more. It would be more of a visceral reaction to them being misgendered than others. So I really do appreciate though that they go ahead and they address that before the documentary even goes ahead and gets going. Um, Talking about Danielle, she goes ahead and says at the top of the documentary that saying out loud at 44 that she wanted to be a trans woman, it was the hardest thing that she had ever done in her life. And something that I think that's very under understated is the fact that there is no time frame, there is no age for you to become the best version of yourself. If you find out at 50 that you want to go back to school to be a journalist, fucking do it. Go back to school to be a journalist. If at 60 you want to run a marathon, run a fucking marathon. If you feel like you are not truly who you're meant to be at 44 and you want to be a trans woman or trans man. I think that's the thing politically, and I'm trying very hard to keep politics out of this. But what is so frustrating to me is the aspect of people going, I can't believe trans people exist. It's like you're acting like it's a choice. Like no one actively is like, man, I'm going to take all these vitamins and medications to go ahead and become more like a woman or more like a man and completely fuck around with my body chemistry, but I'm doing this just for shits and giggles. Like no, like no one does it for just fucking fun. And the fact that, okay, never mind, gonna just move past it. But I really appreciate the way that, and there's actually a scene in here where they show Danielle taking all these pills. I counted, it's like 14 pills that she's taking. She's taking these every fucking day. And you're just like, God damn, like that is just, and props to her. She swallows them all at once. I don't know how good that is for you, but she just shoved it back like a shot. I was like, God damn. But she talks about how she's gone to psychiatrists, counselors, church, therapists, and what I love about this, she goes church, 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 and they talk about it later on in the film about how the religious aspect of this definitely ties in, especially in Texas. For those of you who haven't been to Texas, if you've been to Seattle and you know how many Starbucks there are and how you basically can't spit in any direction without hitting Starbucks, that's the same thing in Texas, but for churches. Churches are fucking everywhere in Texas. I think I had a church in my garage. I didn't even know it. Like it's fucking ridiculous how many churches there are. But it really points to one of the more harsher aspects of this, in the sense of this is a woman who clearly tried to do it, quote, the right way, unquote. She thought that there was something wrong with her. And churches will pretty much throw out one thing to you. Pray the gay away. That's pretty much what they'll do. Like, no, you're not trans. You don't actually feel like this. And so while it doesn't harp on it too much, I think that speaks a lot of volumes, the fact that she repeated church multiple times, because that's clearly something that went ahead and affected her. Danielle grows up, or talks about living in Sugar Land, Texas, which is around Houston, if memory serves. As someone whose folks lived in Houston for a while, I had a decent amount of issues with people in public in Houston as far as like the looks and the glares and not great. So I appreciate the fact that this film does talk about how at the near the end, about how once she transitioned, how her client base basically dried up. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, damn, like obviously you don't want to, move because you feel like you're retreating, like you're running away. But when they talk about the amount of experience that Danielle has and how successful they've been as a lawyer, part of me is like, man, I would love if you could move to like Denver or like Portland, like someplace where it is definitely more liberal, but you could still help people. But I give her all the credit in the world for staying in a place that is not easy and being willing to go through the grind and being willing to go ahead and help people where it's going to be a lot harder. And I'm sure that's exactly why she stays. One thing that I also think that people don't understand is how important seeing looking at what you look at, seeing what you like and what you see in the mirror. That's what I was trying to say. And I mean that in terms of, obviously, some of us might want to lose weight or what have you, but really feeling like you are who you're supposed to be. And I think that's why the trans argument is so infuriating to me. Because let's call it what it is. A lot of us, a lot of us straighties, we, we can't comprehend what that's like, waking up and feeling like you're in the wrong body. Just off that alone, I want people to be able to transition it, because I want people to be happy at the end of the day. As long as what makes you happy doesn't infringe on other people's happiness, what the fuck does it matter? And at the end of the day, I could go over all the statistics about how, body dysmorphia and not feeling like you are who you are go ahead and psychologically break you down and lead to, suicide and all these other, and depression. And I really appreciate Danielle being as raw as she is, because there's a point where she flat out goes, that, either I transition, or I'd be dead in a few months. And it really, and, some people say, oh, it's dramatic. And it's like, no, that's how dire it is, which is why it's so important that we have these conversations and we leave trans people alone. But I really appreciate how vulnerable Danielle is in terms of how dire the situation is. And at the same time, I appreciate how she says that, if my wife was uncomfortable with it, or I thought I was going to lose my family, I wouldn't have done it. And it's one of those things where you go, wow, Danielle loves her partner. She was willing to suffer, continue to suffer, just to go ahead and, make her wife happy. I think that's incredibly, fucking powerful. I believe it's Rebecca who's her wife. Pardon me, well, lost a word. I really like how they talked to her in this documentary, because they ask her even, like, do you consider yourself a lesbian? And she's like, no. And they're like, well, like, do you consider like your wife a lesbian? And he's like, well, no, not really. And he's like, well, like, what do you, and she just kind of goes like, it's our marriage, and what works for us works for us. And again, this is where, like, my Ron Swanson's gonna come out. It's like, people, you don't, I understand we want to learn and, like, have a definition for every fucking thing. You don't always have to. Sometimes you can just leave things the way they are. They're two people, like, they show multiple points throughout their relationship, even before Danielle transitions, and you just see how happy they are. And it's honestly, like, I little peek behind the curtain, I just celebrated 7 years of Leia, and I think watching this documentary, it's one of those things where I just go like, God, I'm grateful. Like, even being unemployed, I've got my two cats. I'm a great cat dad. I have an amazing partner, roof over my head. I'm grateful. I'm truly grateful. And watching this documentary and seeing their love go through all these different stages, after being together for so long, and still loving on each other, and still, laughing together, and experiencing each other, and really enjoying the gift that is a relationship. I found it beautiful. I found it beautiful. There is this incredible scene with Sarah, Sarah Healy, who's Danielle's daughter, and they talk about the whole conversation they have about her transitioning. I do wish they would have gotten into that a little more. I was like, oh, there's I can tell there's some good meat on the bone here. But they go into it enough, but I thought there was a little more to explore there. But Sarah has this incredible line where she talks about how she was mad at her mom because it made her think about how long, her dad had felt like this, and how, what pain could have been saved by if they were able to go ahead and just have this conversation earlier. And it's one of those things where you go, yeah, that's a fair point to bring up. But this is one of those conversations. Look, I'll be real, y'all. I've lost like the amount of friends that I've just lost off of saying Black Lives Matter or you know uh or trans lives matter. Like having those conversations, it just gets exhausting at a point. And so I can understand why Danielle is like, oh God, I don't want to alienate people or make people angry or anything like that. There is a friend of and actually, pardon me, it's oh my gosh, no, never mind, I was right. um there was this she has a friend in the movie. I'm trying to find her name, but she has this friend in the film who talks about how Jerry Ann, that was it. Jerry Ann Young, and she talks about how she has like multiple degrees, like 5 degrees, like several master's degrees. You're like, God damn, like good for you. Incredibly smart woman. But she talks about how she hadn't talked to her daughter in years because she transitioned. And it's just like, holy shit, like you really, like you, like that's your line. And and you can, and the camera kind of zooms in on Jerry, and she just, you can just see how distraught that makes her. How she just wants to be happy, she just wants to be herself, and she lost a daughter because of that. It's fucking nuts. I don't want to get into this story, but there is a story about a woman trying to get to the U.S. and Danielle trying to help her. That I think is an incredibly powerful story. I'm gonna let y'all discover that for yourself. But in closing, I will say Danielle makes this comment about how she's a 60, she's a woman in her 60s, ugly fat broad. And I would just like to say, as someone who got a chance to interview Danielle, she's absolutely gorgeous and she's absolutely lovely. So that's the one complaint I have, that you're incorrect, Danielle. But at the end of the day, she does make this statement. June 17th, 2017 was the day I started living for myself. And that just made me fucking pause the movie and cry, because I thought that was such a powerful statement. And just like, wow, she's living for herself now. Like that's incredible. And I'm so happy that even though it was later in life, she was able to find that peace. I think if you're trans, I have some trans friends. I've already told them, like, you need to watch this. I think if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, this is something that will really hit home for you. If you're an ally, there's plenty. This would be a really great twofer with A Secret Love, which is this documentary on Netflix that I've reviewed. Which, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you do. But yeah, this is an A-. Again, I wish we could have gotten a little more information about the conversation with Sarah. But this flies by. It's like 94 minutes. They do mention that Danielle has another daughter, but she's not comfortable being on camera, which, hey, fair enough. But I really enjoyed this a lot. I thought this was very well done. And yeah, so yeah, A- for our dad Danielle. So our dad Danielle, have y'all seen it? What'd you think about it? Let me know in the comments. You can go ahead and find the show on YouTube at The Real Pineapple. You can go ahead and follow the show pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts: SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneUp, and Samsung Podcasts, to name a few, at The Real Pineapple. You can follow me on Blue Sky at realpineapple.bsky.social. That's REEL, pineapple for everything. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. That's JHunter, and then REEL, and then pineapple. Follow me on Letterboxd at Black Shazam. And you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheRealPineapple. I will be off next week because it's the week of the election, and as per tradition, I do not review the week of an election. So I will have a review for I'm gonna have a review for oh my gosh, I'm totally blank, for Untruth, the Psychology of Trumpism. That will be the one review that will be up next week. So Please go ahead and check that out. I'll also have an interview with the writer and director of the film in Dan Partland. So that will be up live on Monday. I'm excited to bring that to y'all. But everyone, please go out and vote. There is only one choice, and it is not the man, it is the woman who is running for president. Vote for Kamala Harris, for the love of God. Even if for some reason you're not a huge fan of her, which, fine, whatever. You want democracy to still be a thing, right? So, seriously, think about... You know what, real quick, and I know I've ranted a little bit, which is so unlike me, but let me just say this to y'all. We all know gay people in our lives. We all know women in our lives. We all know people who might have health issues and you know, and need to have access to good care. Trump would take all of that away and make their lives harder. So at the end of the day, sometimes it's not about a voting about what's best for you. It's about being able to look the people in the eye that you say you love and say that you protected them with your vote. So, once again, vote for Kamala Harris. I'm not even going to do my whole closing spiel. Go ahead and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. It does help me out. But please go out and vote. Vote for Kamala. And I will talk to you guys in a little over a week. Take care.